Very different things. Our second speaker is Elaine Smith-Tucker, sitting over here, and 1966 graduate of Fabius Central School. Served in the U.S. Army, late 70s, early 80s, and the U.S. Army, what does the R stand for? Reserve?
Reserves, and then I switched to the National Guard and put in 15 more units.
Okay, and here you are today. And it says here you served in administrative and nuclear, biological, and chemical positions. How different can we get, right? And then our third speaker, some of you may know, is Rosemary Hanson. And she is the daughter of Eric and Sue Hanson, and served in desert battle, or here she is in the picture in desert battle dress. Deployed to Iraq, 2003, joined up in 2000. And it says here her baby, meaning not a real baby, but her baby is a 5-ton wrecker used to recover broken or stolen vehicles. As a 5-ton wrecker operator, she drove in many convoys between Kuwait and Baghdad. She says Baghdad wasn't so bad, except when the mortar rounds landed in the base camp I was serving in. And her father, a military man, said, duh. And her mother fainted, it says here. At any rate, it's going to be a good program. Rene, you want to go ahead?
Yes. I got to turn my to the boss here. Can you hear me? No.
No.
We can't hear you.
Oh, there. It's his fault.
You're not on.
I pushed it. Can you hear me now?
No.
Hello? Can't hear you?
Give her the hand mic.
Yeah.
What?
This hand microphone works great.
I don't know what's going on with that.
I'm here. Are you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All I need is one more thing here. But I'll try to get it set so that I can leave it alone, sort of. Okay, good evening. My name is Rene Kather, and I've lived in the town of Fabius since 1978. I'm a graduate of Lafayette Central. I have to throw that in. It isn't on the paper. And all my friends are from either Fabius, LA, Lafayette. You know, it's one of those things. I was asked to speak to you this evening along with Elaine Tucker, who I'm very happy to see here. And not only are we happy she's here, but I can leave out a whole paragraph. It refers to your health problems and so on. So let me go down here. Let me see. Chuck has found another female veteran who has been fully engaged with troops and dangers that are more recent times and certainly different than my experiences. Her name is Rosemary Hanson. Please welcome her. And she will be speaking to you also. We'll both answer questions afterwards. By the way, I was involved particularly with the Korean War. And I want you to know that from my viewpoint, it was not just a conflict. Do you remember it was called a conflict? That was a pain in the butt to most of us who served. And I happened to be serving in the medical aspect of the service. And when I saw the things I saw, I want you to know it was not a conflict. A more positive viewpoint, though, is that many of us grew up with this war. That is, we left our teenage life behind. I served in the Navy. I was a hospital corpsman. I'll describe my duties in a few moments, but first I want to recommend a book written by two women, Jean Ebert and Marie Beth Hall, titled Cross Currents, Navy Women from World War I to Tail Book, published in 1993. Tailhook was, if you don't know, tailhook was a thing that most Navy veterans would like to put behind them. It was an unsavory kind of situation, and I'm really not going to talk about it any more than that. There were 50,000 women in the Korean War. I was one of those 50,000. The Korean War commemoration by the Department of Defense was held on the 50th anniversary of the Korean War. Previously, President Truman, in 1948, had signed the Women's Armed Services Integration Act. That meant that this young lady and myself could go to war. At the time, I wasn't sure that was a great idea, even though I was in service. Of course, this was not the first time women had served, as most of you know. Many women served in World War II, many doing work you might be surprised with, including repairing planes and with responsibilities for adequate armament. But in any event, they were there to do the job that, for which they were enlisted to, unfortunately, give the men a chance to go into battle. Of course, you are also aware of the nurses. They were graduates of recognized nursing schools. The military in the field needed more people trained to care for injured men in battle. This pulled most of the men away from the civilian hospitals. Then as the war proceeded, it became evident that even the licensed women nurses were not of adequate numbers. Because the Women's Integration Act had passed, the medical forces available included enlisted women. So in 1952, that was 61 years ago, I say that quietly, I joined the Navy and selected as my specialized training the hospital corps. The female corpsmen were sent to bases across the U.S. where Navy hospitals already existed. After they arrived and took over the chores normally held by the men were then able to be assigned to the battle units. Incidentally, the Marine Corps does not have a medical staff, so anytime the Marines are in the field, that is the battle zone, their medics are Navy corpsmen. In the Korean War, as many as possible of our wounded, both Marines and corpsmen, were medevaced back to the hospitals nearest to their homes, if possible. Those were the hospitals in which I served. To name a few, I particularly was happy to be there. The National Naval Medical Center in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Naval Hospital, Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee was an air base, a naval air base, but we had a naval hospital there. And the U.S. Naval Hospital in San Diego, California. There are also places where I grew up, as I mentioned before, in all kinds of ways. Of course, some of my duties were not really war-related. For example, in Memphis one time, I was assigned ambulance duty. The first ambulance call I was required to run was to a Navy dependent's house where she was giving birth. I was 18 at the time, and I had not had all the children I've had since. But I knew how for that. That was my first experience. When I think back on stories like that, I'm still amazed that a person can do many things you wouldn't have guessed you could. I'm sure that the other two women have experienced something in that neighborhood of things you had to do and did do, and you never would have thought you could have. But I want to tell you about some of the men. First of all, they tried to make the best of anything that happened. You just cannot believe some of the entries that I've seen. And I've never forgotten. Excuse me. One place though, and sometimes there's funny things that happen and you say, how can this thing be funny? Well, it's the way the men treat it. And it is the acceptance that something like that, something bad is going to happen, and hopefully you'll live through it. So I would say that one of the perhaps funniest things that happened was there was a man in one of the hospitals to me, and that I was in, he had had his whole ear shot off. I mean, there was nothing there. So, believe it or not, there's people in the service that can do magnificent things of fabrication. So they fabricated him a new ear. And they were able to attach it. It's like screwed into something they implanted, and he could take it off or turn it, you know. Now, how did he take that? You know, having your ear blown off is pretty like, woo, pretty close to my head, you know, my eyes, whatever. And the way he did it was primarily that he would wait until we had visitors at the hospital. Then he'd walk down the passageway, the hallway. See, you never lose it, do you? Down the passageway, and when he saw guests coming the other way, people who were coming to see other guys, he would turn his ear, so it's going the wrong way. And of course, they would go by him and go, like this. And might be 10 or 15 of them, you know, like that. And I saw him do it one day, and I was able to go up to him and say, Sergeant, you gotta stop that. Why? It's fun. I said, I know it is, but hold it down. You know, let's say a group of less than 10. And he said, oh. And I tell you that for 2 months later, every time he saw me, he would turn his ear. So, but that's an example of how you have bravery turned into something that they can deal with. And that's the important thing. These guys just have to be able to deal with things. Now, I'm saying guys, because in my world of the military, there weren't any women in battle. And we just did the best we could in the hospitals that we were attached to. And I will tell you that being on that end of it is not scary from my own life, but I have never, ever, ever forgotten what I had the opportunity to do to help those guys recover. So it was a very proud time in many, many ways. Now, a lot of these were injuries were very grim, and they were very gruesome. And it was very hard for some of these people to handle. And sometimes taking care of them meant simply this: bringing them over a Coke or a root beer or something, and sitting down and listening to them, talking to them about their families, their children, their grandparents, where they were from. Okay, you didn't miss anything. They were, I will wind this up by saying, they were unbelievably brave, and I shall always be proud of my association with them. And if I don't cry, I'll say thank you.
Thank you very much. Any quick questions for Rene?
Yeah, when were you in Bainbridge?
Boot camp and 1950.
You weren't in the hospital at that time?
No, I was in boot camp first of all,
Oh.
and I was in Bainbridge. And then I'm trying to think, I went to hospital court school at Bainbridge too.
When was that?
Same year, well, a few months later.
Because I was in the hospital in Bainbridge.
62, 63, or 52, I mean 53.
Yeah, 52, I think it was.
Okay, I probably was there. I'm sorry I don't recognize you. I was quite a bit younger
No,
then.
I'd been in an automobile accident and I had a broken nose. So they put a tape on there and put a bolt supposedly through my head with a wing nut out here, holding my nose. So a lot of people thought my head was.
Everybody grown. You'd be surprised at what you 60, 70 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
but you see, you survived. And that's really the most important part of it.
No, it's
There were
just that it
things
was,
that were,
I hadn't thought about that until you were telling the story.
yeah, that was a good place to start as far as I was concerned. it was rather unusual to be in boot camp.
Well, boot camp,
And if
yeah.
I may take 2 minutes, 3 minutes more. When I was in boot camp, first of all, I don't swim. Ask me what I'm doing in the Navy. I don't swim, but when you go through boot camp, they're going to teach you to swim. You got that? My maiden name was Town. And the next thing I know, a whole bunch of us had to go into the swimming area, and there was a high platform. And they wanted us to jump off that darn thing and right into the water. And I'm thinking, I got the wrong place, you know. I got up there, and as I said, my maiden name was Town, and this Navy chief said to me, "Jump, Town." And I was like frozen, you know. She got right up in my ear and she said, and this is a quote, "Either you jump or I'm going to kick your ass until you're in the water." That's what I did. I jumped. And that was the last time I ever had to do it in the Navy. And I'm glad I survived because they had, what do they call those people that, you know, they're in the water already and you're going to survive. You know, they're not going to let you die. But, you know, there was enough of those people around that I finally got to the other side. And I've never been in the water since. Thank you very much.
So who says you can't have fun in the military? Okay. Elaine, I think this is working if you want to use this, okay? You can hold this or put it down.
Okay. Okay, well, I can just hang on to it like this. Well, good evening, folks. I didn't think I was going to be able to make it tonight, but I was able to do it and gave Sandy a call this afternoon, and said, "Do you still need me?" And she said, "Yes," so here we are. I'm Elaine Smith Tucker. Some of you who have been around this area for a while would probably have remembered my mom and dad, Ruth and Van Smith. What used to be Cook Road, now it's Chase Road. Well, I can start with my dad because I'm wearing his one of his jungle caps from World War II. And on it is his original CBI badge, which stands for China, Burma, and India. Am I too loud? Oh, all right. As being a sergeant, I guess I have enough hot air from here on up to belt it out.
If she clipped it, it would be better.
Oh, okay, sure. Whatever we
I'll turn this one off so we don't have any feedback.
Okay, can we hear?
1, 2,
No, you turned it off.
1, 2,
Now.
1, 2.
It's working.
What's going on?
Up, 2, 3, 4.
Keep doing it.
Well, it was wonderful growing up in this area, and after all these years away to come back, and I remember, of course, what happened at Fabius. Since we on Chase Road came to Fabius, if you were on Newell Hill Road, the lower end, you went to Lafayette. But it was a wonderful place to grow up, and I was very proud of my dad because he had served, being drafted before World War II and not getting out until December of 1945. He was a drill sergeant, and he hadn't lost all those drill sergeant ways from time to time that we experienced. excuse me, we experienced as kids a little bit of that, your mother said, so do it. Make sure it happens. And Dad was always very quiet. He never talked that much about the war. Well, us kids were around, and by the way, I had 3 brothers. And as I said, this was the area that was around China, India, Burma. Chiang Kai-shek was trying to build up his forces against Mao Zedong in China, who was for communism, and both of them had to face the horrors of what happened when the Japanese came into China. He was with the 888th unit going up what was called the Burma-Lido Trail, and that's why they call this the China-India-Burma Trail, because he helped to build that road, and it went through mountainous areas where all you did was just one hairpin after another, and sometimes it was no wider than literally the width of wheels between the trucks, trying to bring more equipment and so forth up. And I never heard my dad complain once about what he had to do, and sometimes he had to help winch trucks up. If some driver got scared and got over just a few inches too far, you could wind up with one of those trucks that went down the mountains, fell right down hundreds and hundreds of feet. And there was not a very good survival rate when that happened. They would try to winch up the goods that they could salvage and so forth. And I guess I always had that soft spot for my dad and what he did. As he got older, he did say things about World War II, and I guess I listened and kind of absorbed it. But I never, as a youngster, had an idea that I would join the military service myself. That was never a consideration at the time. And ironically, my 3 brothers all got out of military service, 2 with high lottery numbers, and my older brother was married and had a baby during Vietnam times, and so they figured it would be a waste of money. He wouldn't stay in any longer than he had to. So they got out of it. Well, as I grew up and went through Fabius and then went away to Geneseo State to become a social studies teacher, which was an acceptable job for women in the mid-60s. And I had never thought there was a nobler type of profession than sharing the knowledge that you have. And it's not necessarily remembering all those historical facts. That was my major. What it was is you tried to present something in such a way that the youngsters would enjoy learning about something new and want to continue to investigate on their own. And all I can say is about the China-India-Burma Trail, or China-Burma India. And they had a wonderful set from, I believe it was Al Howlett, that was given to the Tully Free Library, and they have a couple of wonderful books, and one of them is about this, the Time Life books, and you can read about the CBI folks, or my mom lost her cousin in one of the last raids over in Japan. The plane disappeared, nobody saw it hit, nobody saw it fall out of formation. It just never came back. And so there's a love of learning there, and of course I think it shows the love of family and even where you come from. Well, I got married after a couple of years of being out and teaching down in Georgetown, South Carolina. I didn't tell them that my great-great-grandfather was with Sherman on his march to the sea. Didn't tell them that. But I did enjoy those couple of years there. A fellow that I had gone to college with and I met and got married. And we wound up getting moved to the Washington, D.C. area after he'd done a year remote unaccompanied tour in north central Alaska on the DEW line as a medic. Well, since I married someone who was involved in the military, he had a low lottery number, and he did join the Air Force, as I said, as a medic, and it just kind of all absorbed. I did find a job teaching at a parochial school, and that was really something considering I was Presbyterian. But we did well together, and to a certain point. And then they were going to cut our health benefits. And I said, you know, I've got to find something so my husband at that time could go back to school. And he had been a medic and wanted to get a full nursing degree at least. So we did that. And what happened is when we lost those benefits, I said, what am I going to do that I can earn some money and have benefits? And I said, I know. And I went and called folks in the Air Force. And when I told them that I was 30 years old, he absolutely laughed. And I said, well, this doesn't sound too encouraging. So I hung up from them, not to be deterred, dialed up the U.S. Army. And they said, well, come on down and we'll give you a test called the ASVAB and see what you qualify for. Well, this sounded like a good idea, so I went down and took it. And if I do say so, the guy's eyes popped out when I had finished. The only thing I couldn't do in the Army was be an MP, because I was too short. That's why my brothers always made me short stop on the softball. Well, he said, we'll sign you up right here. And it was 1978 when I went in. There were no more WACs. There was only the Army. And it was a pretty exciting time to be going through boot camp. At the age of 30, I was too old to be an officer, as my education would have dictated. But they said, we'll make you an NCO, non-commissioned officer, in a couple of months if you'll sign up right here. And I did, and went home, and I told the husband, and almost had a divorce then, but the real one came later, so. So I said, well, you know, this can't be too unlike a girl who's had 3 brothers and guys in the neighborhood to have to play with. There were no little girls my age. So what I learned is that I had to be extra tough to be able to go and play with them. They would go and build, a little tree fort with lumber and so forth. Usually they put it in an apple tree, and then in the fall they would dare me to go out there with a little bucket and try to get way out there and bring the stuff in. But it was good preparation to have brothers and see things from a slightly different angle, and I think I adapted quickly to the military. I sort of knew what was going to happen, but it was, as I said, very interesting. I went to basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. I I didn't know it then, but that's where my dad had gotten out of the Army in 45. And it was set up for folks that were appreciably taller than I was. At most of my height, I was 5'2". And I went in there, they gave me a hat, a basic cap, was what they wore in those times, and looked like a baseball hat, only of course it was army green. And they gave me a size that when I came to attention and snapped my heels like they told you, the bill would fall down here like this. I had to have a size 4 men's boot footwear because they had forgotten that women have smaller feet and the arches aren't in the same place as the guys either. And so it kind of made for some really tender toes. But one of the better times was when the drill sergeant said, "I want you jumping in that foxhole, Tucker." And got my running start and came out and jumped and almost hollered, I must be going straight to Hades because of the bottom here. It was designed for someone at least 6 foot tall. And the drill sergeant said, "Throw the hand grenade." And I said, "Drill sergeant, I can't get it out of here." But then there were good times too when I could keep both feet up on the ground. They handed us those play grenades that just kind of went a little poof when you had to throw them. So you had to duck behind something, holler grenade, and throw it. And I threw it and ducked down, but I had one eye kind of there. My throw, from having been a shortstop as a kid, hit that joker they had in there right in the helmet. And the drill sergeant looked at me and I said, "I think he's dead." And he laughed. He said, "Did you play softball, Tucker?" And I said, "Yes, drill sergeant, I was the shortstop." That was that. And I guess the one thing that did kind of get to me one more time is you have to grab a rope and swing up to a platform that's, perpendicular, and then there's another log that goes across. And again, it was made for people who had a lot more longer arms and legs and so forth. So I finally had to climb part of the rope as well as swing, got up on the bottom of the platform there, and then they said, "Jump up and shinny across." And I jumped and I jumped and I jumped, and I finally said, "I'm going to beat this thing yet," and put my legs around it and pulled myself up. And once I got to the top, shinnying across was a whole lot easier on that huge log than in that apple tree trying to hang my legs. And yes, we got down. The only time I must say I was really scared was when we had to climb a cargo net with our M16 and hard hats on and all of that. And it was about the height of, not quite as high as this room, but it was up there. And it was like, "Oh, don't fail me now." And we climbed that, threw ourselves over the top, and came back down the other side. But basic training went okay for someone who was almost old enough to be the mother of some of the younger folks there. And I guess they probably called me mom sometimes behind my back. And finishing up with basic training was interesting, and hopefully they learned a few lessons, like bring some sandbags for that big foxhole, because I'm going to need it. But of course I joked with the guys and said, "Yeah, it's really not so bad jumping into the foxhole if it's not quite so deep." I said, "Because that means your end of the foxhole is going to be what they call the sump, where if a grenade comes in, it gets shoved down there." And I told them, and when it comes to digging a foxhole, I said, I will be done in 5 minutes. You'll be done in how long? Well, so as we left basic training, I had joined up with the idea of having a tour at Aberdeen Proving Ground. And they started me out. I guess they figured by the time you're 1 course short of a master's degree, although I was too old to be an officer, I wasn't too far trained, but what they wanted me at first in the administrative field. And I learned pretty quickly about the government, and in those days, still using electric typewriters and without computers that we use today for everything, it was kind of interesting. I did get up to 25 words a minute was the minimum, and I probably did 28, but got in and out of there fast enough, and went on to record sections and on active duty, worked with the folks in the headquarters company as well. But it came time to get out, and I said, yes, I think I am going to get out. I said, this isn't right. The chief of the military personnel office, I worked for him. I had, by that time, a higher education than he did, because what I did do was task myself. One of my benefits for going through the military training and through the 3 years that I had signed up for was that I could go back and get a different degree, because I hadn't completed the first master's, 1 course short. So I went ahead and got one in personnel management, and it has served me well ever since. And I thank you if you are paying taxes then. After active duty, I decided, well, I was married by that time, and said to myself, I don't really think you should give up on everything in the military. Kind of like that. And it was always, the rules were there. You just had to know the rules, and you would be just fine as long as you didn't make it a point to break them too blatantly. And it was a time of further growth. I was able to get into the federal workforce, civilians, and I stayed with the Army Reserve in Baltimore. And I put in almost 2 full years with them there, then went and found that there was a National Guard unit in the state of Maryland right close by in Havre de Grace. And I joined that unit. A few years later, they built an armory on the Edgewood area of Aberdeen Proving Ground. And so I was able, since I lived on the outskirts of Edgewood, to ride my bicycle to my weekend drill. And of course that got kudos, made sure that the commander saw you doing it, and then everything kind of went along from there. While I was at the Mace, it's not a numbered unit, it's a mobilization AVCRAD repair depot, and AVCRAD deals with aviation assets, and it would be a higher headquarters. And I saw an opportunity in training first, and I was very, very glad that I got in with the sergeant. I did, and he encouraged me. There were not that many women that were in the National Guard in those times, and sometimes the guys could forget and say things and so forth that, kind of questionable. But I never dreamed of doing anything. If it bothered me, I would simply tell them, this is it. And I think that the unquestionable authority idea in those days was much more prevalent than what we see today, where people try to challenge to the edge. Personal observation, perhaps. But, and while I was there, they decided they would let me try for a contest that was being sponsored by the National Guard, who would be able to become the best NCO in the unit. And so I did study for it and was able to come in second place in that one, but it had not escaped the folks who came from our higher headquarters in Baltimore. And so they nominated me for the state, and I did win that one. And then after that, it went to Delaware, and we had another competition, and I was able to win it. And then finally, it came back to the Baltimore area, and there was one more. There are boards of sergeants major, and they select who will win, and I was able to win there. And I was very, very proud of. If I couldn't be an officer, I had told myself, but I'm going to do my best. I think that there is so much potential in all of this for women that we want to push that glass ceiling up a little bit. And I was, very careful to make sure I conducted myself just as the book said. Another thing I was very proud of is they had enough confidence in me that they switched me from the training section over to nuclear, biological, and chemical. It was always nicknamed NBC, and usually we replied, NBC means nobody cares, but well, we tried to make it a little different. And when we went to the field, we'd have a little place established where we would practice getting into what they call mock gear. You have special pants and an overblouse, and you have to wear your gas mask and your hard helmet on top of that. So summer wasn't the time to do it, but we were able to improve the training to a point where people could do this within the required putting on their mask in 17 seconds or less. So we were proud of that. And I was very proud that I kept the nuclear, biological, chemical room in the basement of our armory in such good shape that every time they came out, we got a gold star kind of thing. So that was good. And I did stay after I first got used to the place down there and the National Guard and what their concepts were. We were supposed to have been activated in time for Desert Storm, and it didn't happen. But I was suspect and kind of had an idea when they had called somebody in to teach us in Arabic the different ranks, that it was a good hint we might be on our way. Well, we didn't. The war was over, and I stayed with that unit in the NBC slot until my retirement in 1999. January 1st of 99, I had a little over 20 good years, and the demands of my civilian job had gotten to the point we were traveling all over the world, taking our message on hazardous materials work, and it was very difficult for me to deal with both the Guard and the civilian side of the house. I would have liked to have stayed, but in your heart sometimes this is your chance to give somebody else a chance. And as I said, I hoped that my example would be so positive that they would gladly give another woman a chance at even more. And that's what I feel is something that we all have to look at. No offense, guys, but we're not against all guys. We married some of you, you know. But for women to get that opportunity and to make the most of it. And in fact, just last summer, 2 of my other friends who were women, they also made Master Sergeant. There's only 1 rank higher than that you can get as an enlisted person. And they came up to visit, and we did yuck it up and remember lots of great things that went on. Some of those, do you remember when? Kinds of things. And so I'm still in contact with those folks. I consider it one of the better things I've done in life. And I am so proud now to see many more women in there. And if you look at those newspaper articles over there on the table, you will see that there is a female first lieutenant hauling 40-pound sacks, and she's not too much bigger than I am. So, and I think that kind of wraps it up. I'd like to thank you very, very much for your kind attention today. Any questions? All right.
1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Wonderful.
One, two, three, 4.
Wow.
Good. Okay, well, Rosemary, can you possibly top these stories?
I don't know, I tried.
Is there something left to say here? Rosemary Hanson.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rosemary Hanson. Just want to say it's an honor to speak with 2 other fellow women that were in the military also. It's rare that gets to happen. I'm class of 99, graduated from Fabius. I joined the Army in 2000 and stayed until 2005. I've served different military roles when it comes to being in the military. You have your military brat, which is the child, and then you also have the soldier, and you also have being an Army spouse, which I played all 3 roles at some point or another. Army brat, my dad joined the military, he joined the Army in 1983. I was about 2 years old. He was stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana, Fort Lee, Virginia, Fort Drum, Fort Sheridan, which is since deactivated, Phoenix, Fort Monmouth, and then we came up here to Syracuse. Favorite one I would have to say was Fort Drum and Fort Sheridan, just because of the age. I did a semester of OCC at the age of 18. I realized that going to college was not yet what I wanted to do, and so I decided to enlist in the Army. I did not tell my parents what I was doing. My dad was stationed in Germany at the time, and I came home, told my mom I just joined the Army, and I had the initial freak out, what do you mean you joined the Army? And I said, well, I signed a line, and I'm leaving on this day. So February 4th, 2000, I left for Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri to conduct my basic training. I actually was originally supposed to be military intelligence, but I realized that I actually wanted to work and get dirty and have some fun, and so I was actually able to select to be a mechanic. I was doing so well at my AIT, my Advanced Individual Training, that I was selected to also be the tow truck driver and go to recovery school. I got very, very, very dirty at recovery school. My drill sergeants, they were amazing. My female drill sergeant, she was honestly probably one of my inspirations throughout my military career because of how she was. She was very, very hard, did not play that game of women are weaker or anything like that. She wanted you to be better than everybody else. That's me at Fort Huachuca, or all of us Fort Huachuca getting smoked. Which for those, that means you're doing a lot of push-ups, getting in trouble, and you have to exercise. I had orders originally go to Fort Hood, Texas, and I called and told my dad, Dad, I'm going to Fort Hood once I'm done with training. Next thing I know, orders come down, and I'm actually going to Germany, where he was stationed at the time. He swears he had absolutely nothing to do with this, but I know he had to pull a little bit of something.
I just called the Pentagon.
So I arrived to Germany. My dad actually picked me up at the airport, brought me to my unit. We drove around. I was stationed on a very small concern. We drove around to where my company was going to be, and there were 3 women in my company, and that was it, and I was the only mechanic. So I really had to prove myself to my fellow peers and my fellow non-commissioned officers that I could actually do it, because when a woman comes into the company as a mechanic, nobody thinks they're going to be willing to get dirty. Nobody wants to do anything. The woman just is afraid to break a nail. So I jumped into it. I ended up becoming one of the best female mechanics in my battalion, became one of the best mechanics overall. I was also known as one of the dirtiest mechanics in the Army, because I was not afraid to get dirty. I would get in. People could actually see me from across the street and see how dirty I was. That's my baby. That was actually after I was driving down the Autobahn and I felt some thumping, and about 5 seconds later my wheel broke off from my truck and went rolling down the Autobahn. But she was still my baby, as beastly looking as she was my baby. With my wrecker, my baby, on the steering wheel there was actually carvings on it, and for each battle I'd been in. There was Desert Storm carved in it. Poland 2000 was carved in it, because that was the first time U.S. troops went to Poland since World War II. And I actually had the honor of putting Operation Iraqi Freedom on the steering wheel. My NCO knew how special that steering wheel was to me, so when I came home from Iraq, he took the steering wheel off, gave it to me. I now have that sitting at home. So I joined during peacetime. I joined 2000. September 11th happened. I actually got released from my motor pool early, and I did. I came home, I turned on the TV just to see the second plane hit. About 2 hours later, I was put on guard duty with my flak vest, my M16, and rounds of ammo in my magazine. By the time I was actually put on a point to pull guard duty, all the Germans had come up and set up flowers, poems, and just let us know that they were there for us, since we had been so badly hurt. Life did become very crazy after 9/11. We were pulling guard duty 24 hours on, 24 hours off, which really, once you had sleep into it, didn't leave a lot of time. The motor pool got neglected, so they ended up taking mechanics off of guard duty, and we worked on the trucks and everything. We did manage to have some fun. After they pulled some of us off, with guard duty, we pulled it every once in a while, so we weren't.
You're really great to show that.
So to show we were able to still have some fun. I was able to still see London and Paris. I would go down to Heidelberg to go hang out with my dad, and there's actually a picture of him smoking the same cigar, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, but she bought them.
In March 2003, we did receive our orders to deploy to Iraq. I wasn't actually able to go the day that they all left for Kuwait. I arrived about 2 weeks later. I was at Professional Leadership Development course. We were slotted to graduate, I think it was actually like March 26th we were supposed to graduate. But that was when my unit was already in Kuwait. We were supposed to cross over to go into Iraq. So they let a bunch of us go early, and when we were looking on the blotter as to why people were leaving early and not graduating, it was just going to war, going to war, going to war. And for me, it was a very surreal moment that, wow, this is actually happening. I arrived in Kuwait 3 days before we crossed over, and we were actually the largest convoy to go into war since World War II. And that was just part of the convoy right there. That was the day I left, and we were very happy to be going. We were excited, we were pumped up, we were motivated to go back to our friends, back to, at the time, who was considered our family. Living conditions in Iraq were very interesting. First 2 weeks we had no showers. We used baby wipes. Me being a female, I did actually remember plucking my eyebrows in the middle of a sandstorm because I was trying to maintain some kind of dignity and feel like a woman. We did sleep under the stars. We did pull guard duty. There was one incident, and as a woman, I look back and I laugh, and my NCO thought I was too close to another soldier, so he moved me over a little bit. I laid down, had my M16 point, I was watching the horizon and everything, and all of a sudden I felt something crawling on me. So I'm batting at it, and I looked down and I was lying in an ant pile. So I proceeded to jump up, oh my God, take my Kevlar off, take everything off. Next thing I knew, I'm in my sports bra, my underwear in front of my first sergeant, my motor sergeant, all my other NCOs. They do still talk about that story as well. While on guard duty, we were actually able to watch numerous battles go on from afar. We did watch the fall of Fallujah with our night vision goggles on. Sometimes we're actually able to watch battles go on from afar because of the tracers that were in each of the magazines. And you don't realize what's going on until you come home and years later you're just sitting there like, wow, I really did that. Being a female in Iraq, it really, to me, it wasn't that big of a deal. I had an amazing group of guys. It was, I don't want to say it was an amazing time, but it was a life-altering experience. It made me who I am today. One time as a female where it was a little hard is for men to go to the bathroom. It's a little bit easier when you're outside. Women, we kind of have to bear all. And there was one time where we were in a convoy on a supply run to Kuwait, and we all pulled over because we all needed a break. It had been going on a long time. So I got out to go use the restroom, and I found a ditch I thought I'd be able to go to, and Iraqi men were following me. So I moved down a little bit more. They continued to follow me. Moved down a little bit more. They still follow me. So I was like, this just is not going to happen right now. I need to go, but it's not going to happen. So I get back into my wrecker, and I have the person with me, I have him drive. And so as he's driving, I take off my flak vest, cut open the top of a water bottle, and put the flak vest between us, and I proceed to go to the bathroom in the water bottle, because I had to go to the bathroom. It was all I could do, and threw it out the window afterwards, and they just never looked at me, and he's like, okay. He's like, you do what you gotta do, I'll continue to watch the room. He's still a very good friend of mine to this day, too. I chopped all my hair off before I went to Iraq. I was actually sitting at a pub with my dad in Heidelberg, and he looked at me and he said, Rosemary, you know with the protective mask, it's not going to seal all the time if you have a bun in your hair. It's just going to seal differently every time. So he said, you might want to chop all your hair off, because at the time, we thought Saddam Hussein was going to gas us whenever we crossed a particular line. So I said, okay. And he went to the salon with me, and I chopped all of my hair off. And it actually, it helped out. It helped out a lot. Also helped, you had some women that had really, really long hair, and they would have to take an hour just to wash their hair. And to me, I just didn't think that was acceptable. And so I chopped it all up. Those were our living conditions. That was where I slept. We had horseshoes. We did have a lot of fun while over there. Played horseshoes. We sat out in the sun. There was one time we were sunbathing up on top of the roof, and I was the only female. In my platoon for a while, I was the only female there, so I was surrounded by a bunch of men. And some more of our living conditions. We did go and steal an ice chest from an abandoned Iraqi place. We set up a little swing. It was fun. June 20th was my birthday. 2003 was my 22nd birthday. Somehow my guys did manage to find a birthday cake for me. Worst tasting birthday cake I've ever had in my life. But it was one of the best birthdays of my life, too. They all sung happy birthday to me. We weren't happy where we were. We were missing holidays, missing birthdays of our children, friends, family, and so we tried to have fun with it. And as long as you don't get caught, the sergeant major did put out, just don't get caught, you can have something to drink. And so my best friend back in the States mailed me a bottle of Jack Daniels for my birthday, and it arrived just in time. And we also tried some Iraqi whiskey, which was very, very harsh, but we did what we had to do. On December 5th, 2003, we lost Clark. He was hit by an IED and died instantly. That was a very rough day because I was back home in Germany, and I got the call from a friend of mine, and he told me what happened. Knowing how Clark was, we decided to remember Clark the way he would want us to. And that was have some drinks, tell stories about Clark, and enjoy everybody's company. I came home from Iraq. I came back to Syracuse on Christmas Day of 2003. I lasted all of 2 weeks. Mom says that she saw me get off the plane and knew instantly I was not going to stay. I missed my people. I missed everybody I was with. It was a profound experience, and I wasn't ready to come home yet. So 2 weeks later, I was back at the recruiting station. I said I wanted to go back in. They said, well, when did you get out? I said, well, technically I'm not out yet. I'm not actually out until February 3rd. And they looked at me, laughed, and said, okay, we'll come back February 4th. I said, okay, and 2 months after that, I was back in Germany again. Second time around, there's no deployments, but I still managed to meet more people, go to field problems. Still, I won numerous Soldier of the Month boards, won NCO boards. I still did what I had to do, and then I met and married my now ex-husband. But it was fun. We had a good time in Germany. I don't regret marrying him, but I do wish I'd stayed in and not gotten out. Dual military is hard. He was going to make a definite career out of it, so I said, okay, I'll be the one to get out of the Army. And both of us are actually out of the Army now. So the military wife, it is the toughest job in the military. It's you worry constantly worrying whether you're going to end up moving in a few months, whether your husband's going to deploy. When I was at Fort Bragg with my ex-husband, it got so bad that wives would look out their window to see the car outside telling them that their husband had been shot, killed, or wounded. So it really is, to me, the toughest job in the military. My mom can vouch for it. She was a military wife, and she did, but I think we had one duty station. We were there for 5 months, and she always made it a home. She would take me to school on the first day of school, and she made it fun where I loved being a military brat. So it really, being a female in the Army, I didn't really look as though I was a female in the Army. To me, it was I was doing something that I'd always dreamed of doing. I didn't join the Army to get school money. I didn't join the Army because it was the only road I could go down. I truly joined because I wanted to defend my country if needed and to travel. And I definitely did do a lot of traveling. I met a lot of amazing people. I was very blessed to be in a unit that was very accepting. I had to prove myself as a woman. Even though I didn't look at it that way, I figured everybody had to do that until we did get some more females in. And I was told, Hanson, you're not like the rest, be prepared. And what I ended up doing is if a female came in and she started complaining, I actually would make them cry. I would tell them exactly how it's going to be. If they did not like it, that's just too bad. And one girl, after I told her that, I went to the locker rooms, asked her why she's taking so long, and she was sitting there crying. About 2 years later, both of these chicks, they came up to me later on and said that the way I was on them is what made them better soldiers. And so that's why I'm even hard on women I work with today. I work in a male work field, I work for Firestone, and if I get a female in, I'm just as hard as them, or hard on them. So it made me who I am today. I'm very grateful for it. I would definitely do it all over again. So thank you for today. I do have some pictures of Iraq, some more, if anybody wants to see them or has any questions.
Well, thank you so much, and my goodness, what we learned tonight, folks, isn't it amazing? We have refreshments. We want you to hang around. You may want to come and talk to some of the speakers and get more information. There's a lot of displays, some pictures up here.
Can I get all three of these women somewhere I get a picture?
Why, certainly.
But Chuck, before that happens, I just know for sure that there's another military woman in this crowd.
Okay.
And if there are others who are not readily willing to admit to it, shame on you, because we owe you that honor. So I'd like to have Jennifer Brinkley Powell come to the microphone and tell us her story, because I'm very proud of her as well. So Jennifer, please, just let us know what part of the meeting. She's not going to like me.
Western New York, near Jamestown. I went into the Navy 1987 after law school. I went in as a JAG officer. I was a staff judge advocate at the submarine base in Groton, Connecticut. Got out. It was they started Operation Desert Shield while I was there, and Desert Storm, and I got out about the time Desert Storm was getting over. So it was 1991, and my husband and I ended up coming here to live with Fabius. We've been here since then.
Well, we're very proud of your service as well, Jeff. I'd like to ask Ms. Hanson, when you first joined up and you decided that you wanted to, whether your mom or dad wanted you to do that, did you show up in stilettos?
No.
Just checking. I think, how did you manage to go through the
Yeah,
army?
my army heels were actually about that big.
I looked at that and I said, is that you?
But I did, when I worked for Enterprise, work 12-hour shifts in these. So my feet are kind of used to it.
I didn't get that kind of luck.
Exactly. I'm thinking, wow, that's a plus for you. That's amazing. And I think to honor these women, that we should rise and give them a hand for what they do.